2022 meeting of the Hadley Public Schools. We are going to, entertain a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Annie, can you highlight the adjustments to the agenda, please?
Yes, so in the agenda, which is available on the website to the public, every shaded area is an adjustment from when it was originally posted at Town Hall. We will be reviewing and I'll be seeking approval for a position of Safe Schools and DEI support specialist. I will update you on the NEASC accreditation. We do not have a negotiations update because we are no longer in negotiations. I elected to take that off the agenda. And we do need to, there's some action items that were added. Approval of tech upgrades. Mr. Bigda will be reviewing those with you. Approval of the nature classroom field trip. Ms. Duncan will be presenting that first. And then should you approve the position, I'm also asking that you approve it being funded with ESSER funding in fiscal year 23. And there's no executive session.
Okay, let's dive into it then. We'll start with public comment. Public comment should be no more than 3 minutes and directly pertaining to items on the agenda. If you are interested in making a comment, go ahead and raise your digital hand and we will unmute you. Okay, seeing none, let's proceed with the presentation and discussion items. Item A, Nature's Classroom Field Trip. Welcome, Ms. Duncan.
Hi, how is everybody?
Great, thank you.
Great. So I would like to start to take the 7th grade back to Nature's Classroom again this year after not going for a few years. We would continue to go to the Ocean Park, Maine site. However, we did lose our original dates. So right now, the dates are for the last 3 days of school. I'm hoping we get a snow day in there, maybe 1 or 2. 2 would be perfect. So it's not the actual last 3 days of school. So Nature's Classroom is a hands-on outdoor learning experience for the kids that is a combination of team building, learning to work together, cross-curricular activities. We include science, math, civics, and English into the curriculum for the 3 days. And so is everybody familiar with Nature's Classroom? I know I presented this a few times, so I don't want to keep presenting the same thing. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, helpful for the viewing public, definitely, especially those who haven't been following along. But what I think most of us, perhaps Ethan, with the exception of you, your kids are still at the elementary school. Is that right? That's right. Most of us have experienced Nature's Classroom or through our children. And I can tell you that I've not met one kid who's sad about going to Nature's Classroom. It's a much acclaimed trip and probably the longest and the most sort of the first big overnight trip in their young academic careers. You do a really great job with this, and I'm really so happy to see it come back post-COVID. I don't have any questions. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions on this.
No, I think
sorry.
Oh,
Just as a reminder for the public that the link is live in the agenda. They can read the very thorough request that Ms. Duncan, it's the exemplar of requests for a field trip that she puts together for us. So the public can see that, Ms. Duncan.
Great.
And even from a chaperone point of view, it was great. We had a fantastic time. Even, if the weather didn't hold out, there was plenty of things for the kids to do and learn. And I loved it. I think the kids really got a lot out of it.
Yeah, like you, Humira, I've heard nothing but good things, and I know my kids had great experience. Annie, I guess I'm just curious. I know, Susan, you mentioned this, the timing's not great. Is there do you have any concerns from a broader school perspective about the timing here?
I don't. I do trust Susan Duncan is a veteran teacher. The other teachers that work with her on this are also, I do trust their judgment in the principal. And I did write down that you have put in an order for 2 snow days. I'll see what I can do to accommodate you. That's not this week if any students watch this. So no, I think that I had complete faith that the teachers and principal will determine what makes the most sense in terms of time.
We would just run the last week of school before Nature's Classroom as like their last week to get stuff done and with due dates and that sort of thing for makeup work. And then, it could be a nice reward that they get everything done and last 3 days are at Nature's Classroom.
Would be nice.
And because it's 7th grade, it won't run into any kind of finals for the students.
No.
I just have one question. I see the Board of Trustees is covering 5,000 of the transportation cost. The estimated cost is 365. For any students that are unable to pay that, or if that's ever been an issue, is there fundraising that's done or a scholarship that's available? Any just questions along those lines?
Yes, we do fundraising. We do 2 fundraisers, one that goes the overall cost of the trip, and then one that goes to individual costs that kids can raise. And some kids raise the whole cost of their trip. We also do have scholarship money that through the school that kids can apply for. Well, not really apply. They just let me know. And then I let Dr. McKenzie know like the list of students that need help. So it's really available for everyone. Anybody who wants to go can go. There's money should never be the issue that they don't go.
Perfect.
So now that I'm out of the loop and I no longer get hit up for fundraisers, please send me an email. And I love that. Are you still doing popcorn?
Oh yeah, we're doing the popcorn again.
Okay.
That's always
Hit me up.
popular. And they get 50% of the proceeds for that one. So that was a great fundraiser.
So definitely hit me up for that.
Thank you, Susan, for ensuring that it's a really great educational experience as well as an affordable one that all students can take part in. And a really big thank you to the Hopkins trustees for, again, funding a learning excursion like this. They're so valuable and we really appreciate their assistance.
We really appreciate it because transportation went up like more than double. It was like triple what it was 3 years ago. It was crazy how much it went up.
I was going to say that seems really expensive, but yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really, really expensive. The transportation.
Yeah.
The program itself and the years we've done it, I think it's only gone up like $50 to $60 since
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah, it's barely gone up the actual program fee.
Yeah.
Benefits of Maine, rural Maine. Terrific. Well, we need a motion. Would anyone like to first a motion?
I make
So
a
moved.
motion.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Duncan.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Susan. Have a good night. Thanks for
You
being here.
too.
All right, we're moving on to the presentation on the proposed tech and security upgrades. And we have our technology director, Steve Bigda here. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Okay. So the hot ticket item these days is school security. That is pretty much on the forefront of every tech director's agenda. Tonight, I bring to you a presentation about securing both our campuses in the way we're going to do that, and probably have it in a multi-phase project form. So are you all looking at the presentation, or do you want me to screen share it?
We're looking at it, and for the viewing public, it's available on the
Okay.
on our agenda.
Okay. So the company we're looking at going with is Verkada. They're about a 10-year-old startup company out of San Mateo, California. We have a designated team that works with us. They basically group it out by regions in the United States. So we've had many conversations, Chris and myself.
So sorry to do this. so sorry to interrupt. I realized that sometimes when watching the recording, it's actually helpful to see the presentation. So would you mind sharing?
Oh, yeah, no, I can, yeah,
Jeez.
it's here.
Thank you.
Everybody seeing that now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. All right. So they've been in business over 10 years. I've used a few of their cameras in my previous roles in higher education, which I've been in for like the last 25 years. So really good products, trusted platforms, scalability, things like that. So again, I've met with the principals. Each campus seems to have their own need and specific set of circumstances that they would like to address via building security. And so we're looking at doing that first. So the first thing is getting campus coverage via cameras. Right now, Hopkins has 1 camera and Hadley Elementary School has 4 cameras. The 4 cameras that are located at Hadley Elementary School are basically outdated and old, and they're easily hackable, so they need to come out regardless of what's happening. There's basically a bulletin saying if you have these cameras, there's actually some money out there that you can apply for to get rid of these and get new cameras in place. So that's kind of the driving force behind this too. The main driving force is obviously the safety and security of our students and our staff and our faculty. Let's see here. So company, like I said, more about them. Basically, this picture here tells you how much they can actually do through their products. They have environmental sensors, video security, access control, guest management. At bigger schools and bigger districts, that's a huge thing. And intrusion detection, which at bigger schools is also a hot ticket item. So my goal is to get all of our security into a single pane of glass, meaning, we have one screen you're looking at, you get all your information from the screen. Phase 2 of this project potentially being the building access and card control for the doors, the swipe control. That way everything coincides with what the cameras see. So you get a swipe, you get a register, a swipe, you have camera documentation to back that up. So really good, future scalability, things like that. Consolidated infrastructure, single user management, basically IT supported. You can basically hand out access to anyone. Obviously that'll be determined through policies. You can share a camera. So if there's a live event going on, you need to share it with public safety. You can click a link, share it with whomever. We'll also have access control set up for emergency situations, things like that. Basically the process is getting every piece of their equipment to work with every other piece of equipment. So, listed here, like I said, they have cameras, they have access control, sensors. Those are the 3 things that we're mainly looking at starting with. And here you can see that you can monitor them from anywhere. It's cloud-based. The cameras themselves are built in. We're going with a 30-day retention policy. That seems to be the norm for K through 12 institutions. Obviously, the more retention you want, the more you will pay for over 30 days. If you do have an event, you can archive that and that's stored indefinitely. So if you do have an event within 30 days, you say, all right, let's take that segment, we'll archive it, and we'll have access to it. It's infinite scalability. So if you say, hey, we need 3 more cameras added on, all you're basically doing is paying a license fee. You enter it into your infrastructure and boom, you have access to cameras. And again, if any of you have questions individually or if you have something you see here, you can certainly just stop me and I'll answer what you have. So looking at the products like this, cameras, they have indoor, outdoor, 2K, 4K, HD cameras. A lot of what we're going to choose on the exterior are going to be 2K cameras. Some of the larger areas we're going to cover with 4K. At the end of this, we have a map of where we plan on placing the cameras. Access control, again, we're going to have 2 viewing stations at each campus. So main office viewing station and principal's office viewing station. This will give everyone, that's allowable access to these things. These can be turned off too. So if principal has a meeting, they don't necessarily want to see what's going on. They can just black out the screen. The environmental sensors were a big necessity for the Hopkins area. Not that we don't care about air quality at the elementary school, it's just they're doing an air study there, I believe in the next year or so. And we will review what's needed there at that point. But for now, the high school is more of, smoking, vaping, activities going on in the bathrooms that, you can't catch with a camera, but with an environmental sensor, which captures noise, because we have had some damage in the bathroom. And obviously it's checking for 7 types of chemical reactions in the air, which include vaping, smoking, and those types of things. So basically how that would work, it detects a vape, a text gets sent to a designated group of people. Obviously we can't see who's in the bathroom, but because there's a camera located nearby, you get a timestamp and say, okay, look, so-and-so came out. We at least question them on what was going on. And, whatever happens from there, happens from there. The other things, where it says alarms, gas the mailroom, again, we're a smaller campus. We're not going to use those features. But again, they can be scaled out. So any questions yet?
Not yet.
Okay. These are the types of cameras we're going to be using. Dome series camera, which cover basically hallways. Mini series cover kind of like dead ends, stairwells, things of that nature. Bullet series are if you're looking for like a long focus point, like way off in the distance. And the fisheye series are going to give you a 360 overhead view of what's going on. So like cafeterias, gymnasiums, main entryways are all going to be the fisheye series. The viewing station is what they're going to get. So basically you break up your access control and your grids that way. So, and what one school sees, the other school's not going to see. HES will get HES view, Hopkins will get Hopkins view. And if then somebody on an admin level needs viewing on both, that can be set up as well. And it's basically just your typical grid. If you, for lack of a demo, if you click on a grid, you can enlarge it, you can go back and forth, timestamp. Basically, it's like running, a VCR from back in the day, forward, rewind, pause, those types of things. The environmental sensor is really a slick gadget. Again, it can check, and it will check indoor air quality, for one, just the quality of the air, the granular details of what's going on in the air. So the PM 2.5 is smoke related. The TVOCs are, like it says, fuel, paints, cleaning products, things like that. And then of course the vape detection and other detectors. It has motion sensing. It has sound level sensing. So, you set it for 80 dB, if someone crashes into something, whatever, that'll trigger an alarm. Someone will get a text saying, hey, there was an event happen, let's check what's going on. It allows to get a much better insight onto, if things are getting broken, if things are getting damaged, we can say, hey, we can go in there and find things pretty quickly and hopefully pinpoint what's going on there. So the environmental sensor are really cool. We have 6 going in Hopkins and 1 going in the greenhouse. The one in the greenhouse is basically just for the server room to keep, humidity levels, air conditioning levels, sound levels, make sure everything in the infrastructure world is staying in tip-top shape. For licensing, we're going to go with a 10-year license. Basically, it means this is going to be a one-time cost. So we're buying everything up front. Like I said, over here, it shows 365 days local storage. We're not doing that. We're doing 30 based on what all the other institutions, K-12 institutions are doing. With that 10-year, you get next day RMAs, you get free upgrades. If a camera dies within that 10-year, they just cut you, what'll happen is they'll send you a new camera. If it's a newer model, you'll end up with a newer model. No updated software cost, no updated firmware cost. You have unlimited number of users for this. And again, there's probably not going to be that many just based on the sensitivity of what the data is going to show. And, for renewal costs, you just be like, hey, in 10 years, we'll have to look at, Verkada 2.0, or, by then it may be something different, but at least it's going to take care of us for 10 years, kind of in a set it and forget it atmosphere. So, again, moving on to other projects, it'll free up that money. Just like, hey, it's a little more initially. Cameras, obviously, you guys, I think, have seen the quotes, so they're not exactly cheap, but they are kind of the Cadillac of security. So how these all work together, again, they basically built this into a one-plane platform. So you're going to log into the Verkada Command Center. You will get all your information in real time. So if you need to see an event that you need to share out with public safety, if there's a medical event, if there's a vape detection, again, all the stuff's going to come up on the screen in real time. It'll report, again, you can create reports, you can create alerts, you can create time zones of when things are going to be monitored. And again, for phase 2, we'd be looking at doing tying into access control for the buildings, the card swipes, and monitoring the opening and closing of doors. With that, it'll allow us to, if a camera's pointed at a door, a student lets in 3 people, it'll say, hey, 3 people entered this door. Maybe you want to check that out. If a door has been propped for your set amount of time, as far as, hey, most doors are set for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. If you cross that threshold, you will get a ping saying, hey, gymnasium door propped open for, past its time limit. And then you can say, click on the camera, see what's going on. If it's a couple of kids bringing in some boxes, you can monitor that, or you can just walk down there and say, hey, why is this door open? There's some overrides too. So if you basically have like facilities doors, you can have those armed, but you can also just say, hey, we're doing some maintenance. Let's take this off the queue for a moment and do that. Panic buttons, principals, front offices can be set up with panic modes for schools that are in serious lockdown mode and they have, electronic locks on every door. You can just hit that button and all those doors are going to lock. For us, I don't know that we'll ever get or need to go to that level, but at least give you, along with panic buttons, you can just set an alarm. You can send out a mass text. You can do all sorts of broadcasting with that panic button, and you can program it to do several things, not necessarily panic mode related. And again, the goal of this is to tie everything into one thing, so we have better access and better viewing and better security and better eyes on what's going on our campuses. This list here is just some of the neighboring schools that are using this product. Again, it's pretty popular in colleges. A lot of schools, because they are doing more of just, again, they initially started as security cameras. They have since brought in their portfolio to include access control and unintended access places and things like that. So that's really become a good selling point for them. So we're on a tech list, or I'm on a tech list for all the Mass K through 12 schools, where all the technology directors and people of that, they can log in and say, hey, you guys have questions. It's a really good resource, but we've gotten really good feedback and really good remarks about going with Verkada. This is a very crude map of where we plan on placing cameras. We did do a walkthrough with the vendor a couple of weeks ago. They had come out on site and said, we kind of did it via the map, but without them actually getting eyes on campus, it was difficult for them to see what some of the challenges of the buildings held. So typically this is what we're going to do. Up here on the first floor, we're having 3 cameras. These blue icons here designate the vape sensors. So there's going to be one in each of the public bathrooms. And this number 7 way up here is the one that's actually going to go in the greenhouse. So various levels of cameras. These are 360-degree cameras. These are outdoor rated cameras. And again, the goal was to get basically 360-degree field of view around the school and as much coverage inside public areas inside the school. Looking at doors of, this camera here would cover restrooms here. This camera here covers restrooms here. This camera here would also cover that. So, they get really good, probably within 100 to 150 feet of recognizable imagery, depending on the quality of the camera. So if you get a 4K camera, obviously that can stretch out, and again, there's lots of factors, night, day, quality of the room, height of the camera, things like that. But essentially you're looking at least 100 feet of visibility with these cameras. So this is kind of the layout for Hopkins. We have 18 cameras and 6 sensors, and then Hadley Elementary School is going to get 16 cameras. And again, more so, April was interested in seeing what was going on more inside the school. Jen Dowd was interested in more seeing what was going on outside the school. So again, each school has their individual challenges and requests. And again, not putting vape sensors and environmental sensors in the bathrooms, as they are pretty expensive. We opted not to do that for the elementary school at this time. If there becomes a need further down, and if the air study that's done later on within the year yields that, we need to have some of that. But again, it's a newer school and everything has been good so far. So we'll see, we'll address that when the time comes. so at the elementary school, it's basically just cameras at this point. So again, similar setup, entryway cameras, covering bus loading, offloading, cameras on the corners. This one here, this right down here, this number 1 camera will actually catch street traffic as well as number 2 camera. So if there's an event or an accident, entryway into the school, we'll have coverage that way. Same thing with the camera here at Hopkins. These cameras will also catch traffic out at the street. So that's pretty much the goal. That's pretty much the plan. It's a good sized project. It's certainly not a cheap project. But again, with the hot ticket being, let's secure our doors. Let's have eyes on campus. Let's see what's going on. The goal is just make sure that, we are being safe and secure and at least doing the best we can to provide, a sense of security to all the folks that are part of the district. So
Thank you,
that's all I
Stephen.
got. You're welcome.
A question for you about the PDF with 2 quotes. Can you explain the difference between the 2?
They're based by their quotes. Each one's a school.
Okay.
So I think quote number 2 in that list is.
The first one's Hopkins Academy, the
Okay,
second.
yes, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions from other members of the team?
So Steve, thanks for the presentation. When you say
Oh, you're welcome.
this is the higher end, and clearly there's others that have adopted it. So we're getting quality, we're getting good service over 10 years. You have a sense if we went with the cheaper version, how much we would save?
Problem with going with cheaper versions is you end up in a not a lot of them only go out 5 years, so you're going to be 5 years out, and then you're going to be presented with the same problems, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. There's 2 schools of thought of just saying, hey, we can either dump this after 5 years, saying we're not happy with the product at all. So 10 years is a long time to commit, but again, it's basically a committal of we kind of own everything at that point. So, if 5 years down the road, we don't like it, again, we're not talking millions of dollars. I mean, we're not talking no dollars either.
Right.
But, say in 5 years, we're not happy with the product, we can start migrating somewhere else based on, income need, where the district's at financially, things like that, but, that is a good question of looking at other vendors. I really haven't found much in the way of, they're more local vendors using kind of a nationally based product. So you really don't get the expertise. You get more of a local, like, hey, we've used it before. At least, in the initial findings of trying to find a vendor who knew their products well and could support them. So, with installation, it's a different ball game, because well, here's what we install and here's what we like, but we're not the actual company that manufactures them. And Verkada is kind of the opposite. We manufacture the products, we sell the products, but we don't install the product. But they have a series of nationwide pre-approved contractors that are Verkada vetted, and they will follow their specs on installations. So yeah,
I can,
again, so I haven't really found a good vendor outside of these folks that will do the scalability like they will, and give us that single pane of glass of information of looking at everything that's going on in an instant, rather than we have one company, well, we got to go here for the cameras. All right, now we have door sensors. So now we got to call these people and deal with these people for door sensors. So, from a support standpoint, if we can get one point of contact for all our issues, it makes streamlining and getting things working, or if there's an issue, a lot easier on my end, rather than trying to call 7 different people for, what may or may not be a problem.
Sure.
there's also been some degree of vetting that's happened at the state level. Chris could certainly comment with more authority on this, but they are part of the state approved vendor list. So the aspect of 30B is taken care of, and in order for them to be on a pre-approved vendor list, they would have had to go through some degree of vetting on in order to be selected for that.
Thank you, Annie. Steve, question for you about the 11th year. We own all the equipment. It's already set up and wired. We wouldn't have necessarily the rapid support. And what would we lose at that time if we didn't sign up for another period of time?
The 11th year, we would not end up, well, again, I mean, I think at that point, you'd be looking at replacing hardware anyways. 10 years out in hardware world is or electronics world, like your TV, it's 10 years old. It's like, you don't fix it, you throw it away, right? It's kind of the same thing with cameras, again, 10 years out, who knows what cameras are going to look like, what they're going to be capable of doing, how they're going to connect, those types of things. So, 10 years out, we obviously not 10 years out, 8 years out, we start looking at, hey, are we going to renew this? These cameras are working fine. They're indoors. We don't have to touch them. We just have to renew licensing. And again, licensing is cheaper than actually buying the hardware. There's a hardware cost, there's a license cost. So that's something to look at, on that 10-year plan and saying, hey, we're going to keep, because again, if you have a 2K camera inside and it's basically looking down a hallway, that thing should last you 20 years. Again, these are quality made products. Again, if you ever get one in your hand, they're just solid, they're robust, they're made to last. And again, if they don't, they swap you out when you get one the next day. So, and from a bandwidth standpoint, they do all their recording locally on the camera. So how we have our network set up is these cameras will be on a UPS enabled switch. So the UPS is just battery backup for an extended amount of time. So if we do lose power to the building, the switches will stay up, the cameras will stay up, so they'll continue to record even though there's no power in the building, but there is power to those cameras. You won't be able to log in and see what's going on, but they'll still be recording as they would. So that's one of the benefits of using them. Another benefit is the way they do this. The traffic on our network is very minimal. It's actually less than phone traffic. So, again, the only time it really uses traffic is when you log in and start, reviewing footage and things like that, which, again, is hit or miss depending on the event. So, but yeah, to get back to that question, 10 years down the road, probably about 5 years, you do a review of how things are working out. Again, you do this yearly, but, at the 5-year mark, you say, hey, are we looking for new vendors? 8 years out, you say, all right, are we happy? What's our plan? We got to get new quotes. We got to replace 5 cameras. We got to replace 10 cameras. You get that count information. And again, you go back and say, hey, we're going to stay with you guys. We're happy with the performance. We're happy with the product. And again, 5 years out, because again, it's not a contract we're signing per se. So if something were to happen, you're just out the 5 years of licensing if you decided not to continue on any years down the road. So there's that aspect. And again, 10 years is a long road. But I feel strongly enough in the product and they stand behind their product that I think it's safe to go that route. But again, 10 years, you review it a few years prior to and say, look, where are we going next?
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other thoughts or questions for Stephen?
Do we have a sense of how much installation will cost?
Unfortunately, yes. No, we actually are meeting up with a vendor shortly to discuss installation costs. Prevailing wage kind of hurts coming out of the higher ed environment where we could just get vendors as needed. K through 12, I find a bit cumbersome as far as all that contract work. Thankfully, Chris is here to hold my hand through it all because some of it it baffles me. The complexity of it, but we do what we got to do. But yeah, prevailing wage for this it's going to be pricey. I would say HES, because it's a newer school and it's more wide open, there's less walls and stuff to core and drill through. That HES will be the cheaper of the schools. Hoplin's going to be the challenge because of the low doorways, the low hallways, and getting things out to those corner cameras. So I don't even want to put a price on it because I don't really know what they're gonna. I mean, I kind of have a construction background. I can guesstimate and say, it'll be 60 grand. If it comes back at 100, I don't want to be like, well, you quoted us 60. So, I'm not really comfortable in giving an actual figure, but I know it's not going to be, cheap, for lack of a better term.
Okay. Annie, how are we gonna pay for it?
I'm asking in the action item that the school committee, if they would like to approve this security measure, that they would also approve that we would use school choice for that. You do have a copy of your revolving account updates, and we can talk about school choice and school choice balances. And then we would bring back to this school committee when we do the final authorization at the end of the year for how much we need out of school choice. You'd vote that amount, but right now, because we don't have the installation cost, I'm asking for, if you see fit to approve this security upgrade, that you would also approve using school choice funds as needed.
Annie, does it make sense to wait to see what the installation costs are going to be in order to get a total project cost that we can review and then approve?
So the quote is good for the quote. You see there are discounts on the quote. So the quote is essentially good until right after this meeting, until tomorrow. And I think that in terms of installation, I guess at the end of the day, the decision that we need to make is that the installation, yes, it will be prevailing wage, but we'll also, on the installation, in accordance with 30B, go out to bid and get the lowest responsive and responsible who can do the work. And I don't know that, yeah, I don't, my recommendation is that if the school committee feels that this is a useful security upgrade to make, that we proceed with the purchase of the security upgrade, and then know that we can also know that the price of this product will increase.
May or may not increase.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
May or may not. In
No,
fact,
it's entirely up to you.
the created date on the quote is October 28th, and the expiration date is also October 28th. So it appears that we had very little window to approve this.
That's supposed to be 11/28. I think that's a mistake there. Chris, actually, I don't know, Chris, if you can hear us, he was working with the folks on this quote. So he may not be, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry, here I am. So first of all, we were signing it originally on October 28th. In dealing with the bid cooperative that we were working with on this, it ended up, it was quite a lot of fun actually to work with these guys. They were very, very nitpicky with how they wanted the quotes exactly. And so finally at about 5:30, I was working with people in California, so it was earlier in the day for them, but about 5:30 on Friday night, I pulled the plug and said, guys, we're not signing this until Monday, and which is October 31st. So even though the quotes are dated the 28th, which was the Friday, they're not actually signed until the 31st. So I think we have until December, probably either November 30th or December 1st, whatever 30 days is.
Although just technically speaking, the document says expiration on October 28th. So we're going to have to get a new quote anyways. Is that right? Is this quote?
I think the emails that Chris exchanged would take care of the fact of when the actual signing took place. Am I correct there, Chris, that the fact that the quote itself, do you have email documentation indicating that the quote is good for 30 days from signing? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was hoping you could read my lips. Yeah, that's correct. I'm sorry, I was trying to pull up the copy of it that I have as well, just to see if I have the signed versions here. Let's see.
While you're looking that up, any other comments from other school committee members on moving on securing technology without knowing how much it'll cost to install, or whether we should wait and look at the whole picture? Thoughts?
I mean, we're gonna have to install it in some fashion. Somebody's gonna have to install it. So whether it's a quote from a different vendor who does the installation locally and uses off-the-shelf products. I mean, I'll defer to you, Steve. That sounds like you've done your homework. Other schools are invested in this. I'm a believer of paying for quality, and especially in something that is important in this. I like the idea that it's all consolidated into one. I think that'll make it more effective, that single pane of glass idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, Paul, it's again with the crew that we potentially are going to have doing the installations, that they're recommended and a Verkada certified installer. And again, I mean, prevailing wage is prevailing wage, right? You're going to pay that to
Right.
Johnny next door, the local electrician down the street, or these
Right.
guys. So my hope is that because they've done this for as many years as Verkada has been in business for them, that they do know how to get the product up and mounted and
Yeah.
and working in a timely fashion, rather than the local guy who may be cheaper, but again, it all comes down to billable hours. So, if it's a quote, then say, hey, great. But obviously, we have these issues going down the road where Verkada saying, hey, the cameras weren't installed correctly. You didn't use a certified installer. We have these problems. So, we can only help you with this portion of it where, again, with the whole thing kind of being and hopefully being integrated and seamless, again, if we have that vendor that has worked with the other vendor and their partners, then say, hey, there's a lot less finger pointing that'll happen between them two. They'll just say, hey, fix it, we want this thing working. And at the end of the day, I think having that brings value to just getting the local guy to hang these things up.
I definitely don't think we should skimp when it comes to installation if we're buying the Cadillac of cameras. The key question is sort of what is the cost of the Verkada approved installer, so that we understand what the total project cost is. That's my only concern. But if you think it's comparable to what a regular electrician would cost, more or less, then we could use that as a guide.
I mean, it would. I actually did bring an electrician in. He wanted the statement of work, which again, I wasn't going to do because we weren't sure the direction we were going and if we were going to get approval. So rather than doing all the legwork beforehand, let's get the approval and then bring in the people to gauge the amount of work ahead of them. So again, it being the Cadillac, I think the Cadillac reference is good, and it's affordable for us because we are doing, a smaller version of this. Typically the jobs they do are 50, 60, 100 cameras spread across, each building with 8 buildings. So, they're doing hundreds of cameras, hundreds of locations in these bigger districts, and it becomes really pricey then. I think that's kind of the joy of us being smaller, is that, we have a fair amount of cameras, but we're not over the top with them. So we're not spending all these money on cameras we don't need, or we have 7 locations that, like, hey, it was good at 100 grand, but now at 400 grand just for cameras, it's like, well, pump the brakes. Let's go down to Walmart and just get the cameras off the shelf because that's what's affordable. So, money is, again, they're not cheap, but they do have excellent value, and they do have very easy user interface. I mean, it's just the ability to get things done in this thing. And if you need to spec out an incident, you just click that camera, go through the timeline, highlight 2 things with your click archive, and that thing's saved. And then for that point, you can email it, save it, and do whatever you need to do with it. So a lot comes with that price of just ease of use. Set it, forget it. You're covered for 10 years, 9 years out. A camera, one of your outside cameras gets struck by lightning, or it gets rain, inside it gets damp, it gets damaged, they're sending you a new one. So, I mean, that's the joy of a 10-year lease is well, it's not a lease, but 10-year ownership with 10-year warranty is that, you're not going to find that on other makers, other manufacturers' products as well. So
I have a quick comment and then I'll turn it over to you, Chris. I see your hand. Annie, I think what I'd want to see happen as we, approach our 5-year timeline, and certainly as we go through, years 1 through 5, that we're tracking the sort of like the utility of the tools, what kinds of benefits have come from the use of it from a safety standpoint, as well as just general improvement in education standpoint. I think that's going to be really important to determining whether to continue to invest further down the line and also to defend such a sizable expense. Chris.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. The first being with the cameras, we had added one a couple of years ago at HES. Excuse me, just because the camera they had wasn't giving any kind of a picture that they could actually recognize who was at the door when you ring the doorbell. If I remember correctly, that was around $2,500. That was for one, and it was I think it was a standard def camera because that's all we have, I think, at this point in time. So, I mean, there are certain economies of scale, obviously, when you buy 40 or 50 cameras like this. The installation is going to be a little bit cheaper per camera because they're doing a bunch of them in a day versus just one. But, it just gives you some kind of guidance as to, well, this is what we were paying for one camera a couple of years ago. I'm sure, that same camera's gone up in price now. And the other thing was just, with the install, Steve mentioned prevailing wage, and that is correct. Whether we bring in, say, our own electrician or anyone, every time we bring in a vendor, they have to we go out for a prevailing wage rate and we have to follow that. So any vendor that we go out to bid for will follow the same prevailing wage rate, regardless of who it is. So just a little heads up for you guys. That's all to kind of let you know how it works.
Good point. Good point. Thank you.
Yep.
Christine.
I was just curious about, so again, what is the timeline on this that we're looking at? When
For
do we-
installation or for, well, again, it hinges on approval of the project. And then basically hinges on the availability of vendors to come out, quote the installation costs. Getting the product isn't a challenge at all. They've taken measures pre-COVID to make sure that they have stock, and they have guaranteed stock of every camera we need, every mount we need. So availability of the product is not an issue. Right now, it's just finding a vendor that is capable of doing the work, that is hopefully Verkada certified and has availability of, again, my timeline is sooner the better. Based on approvals. So ideally, I think in initial discussions with vendors, we're looking at probably a Christmas break kind of start time for this. Again, we don't, coming from higher ed where projects, have to be done yesterday, the scalability here or the logistics in K through 12, I tend to run faster than the projects do. So, which is fine. I'm figuring that out too, as I tread my way through here. So, but for me, any project I can get off the ground and get going sooner. Again, you end up buying the product. I think they give you about a 30-day window. We can get an extension on the licensing options. So if we get approval, they can give us up to 90 days deferral on the licensing start time. So basically we get all the hardware. Licensing would be deferred 90 days, meaning, 90 days from the time of purchase, we would have to get these things installed and working. And I think that timeline fits okay with vendors that I've spoken with about getting on site and getting the job started. So once everything's been started, you call the company back, say, hey, everything's up and running. You can activate those licenses, or as cameras are installed, you activate those licenses. And then hopefully within that 90-day window, you are now have all your licenses activated, and the countdown starts from 10 years from that point, not 10 years from when you actually sign on the dotted line. So there is a deferral on getting installation done prior to, you know, our count getting kicked.
So we're looking at basically anywhere from 100 and what, say 150 to 170. I mean, what are we talking here? Maybe less?
Talking total project cost.
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't really comfortable with giving just a shouting out an estimate. Because you know, I don't install these for a living. I have done enough of this work, and I have my own timeline of things, but you know what my
But high
timeline.
end, what do you think high end is? I don't want to say yes and then all of a sudden we're back, you know, we
Yeah.
find out that it's going to cost double the amount that we expected. So, you know,
No,
to at least have a high end would be good.
I would think, I would guesstimate that the installation costs would not exceed the cost of the cameras.
So 150 approximately.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's being on the high side. Again, just initial conversations. HES school is going to go quick. You know, everything's kind of wide open. Speaking with the principals, they did say that, you know, they would allow installations to happen during school hours if, you know, if the vendor is on such a schedule that we have to start, you know, not during a break or something like that. You know, they would allow work to be done during working hours, you know, with the exception of, you know, drilling and things would be kept to a minimum, or during bell times, things like that. So the principals were eager to get this going as well, and are willing to work around schedules of installers to make this happen. And again, we don't want to, you know, have X amount of dollars sitting in boxes for months on end, because at a point you start paying those licensing costs.
Very
as
good.
well.
Thank you. Oh, so team, let's deliberate on this project. Any one want to begin with their thoughts and comments?
Yeah, can I just throw something out there? I just, maybe I'm really overthinking this, and you guys can stop me if I am, but given all of the work that's going to be you know, in terms of our capital improvement plan, if any of these things have to be moved or adjusted, or any of them are, I'm just thinking kind of like scenarios in which cameras have to be moved or adjusted, or they break because of other work that's going on. Is that stuff that's going to be covered? Is that stuff that we have to think about in terms of where we're going to put cameras? I'm just thinking, you know, there's locker rooms that are going to be redone. I'm just trying to think outside the box here.
Well, Ethan, we won't have cameras in locker rooms. We will have sensors.
Right. So the sensors mean, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and sensors are basically wireless. They have 10-year batteries, lithium batteries in them. So, you know, they're basically a set it and forget it kind of thing as well. As far as cameras, interior cameras, those can be moved by myself. I have that skill set where, you know, basically they're ceiling grid mounted, wall mounted, things of that nature. Pretty much the challenge for anything interior right now is just getting a wire to that location. Either Cat6e, you know, some sort of power over Ethernet wire to those locations. So running basic cables, I mean, that's, you know, people have been doing that for 100 years now. So getting wire and power, it's all on the same wire to these locations is kind of the easy part. The interior mounting is kind of the easy part. Obviously, it's more challenging in the gymnasiums, the cafeterias where you have the high ceilings, and, you know, don't necessarily have attic space or crawl space. So surface mounting on some of these things is where the time is going to start getting eaten up once you start putting things in Romex and things like that. And obviously it has to be steel tubing so students can't come along, cut a wire, things like that. So exterior of the school, I don't really know the plan, so I don't know if things are getting added on to the school. You know, I don't think so, but exterior moves, I mean, basically it's a 4-bolt wall mount screwed into brick. Again, more of the work is getting the actual wire to those locations. You know, so the corners of the school, you basically got to go through a foot of concrete and brick, or either come out attic or come out indoor spaces. So that's, you know, that's where the majority of the time is going to be spent, is getting to those far, those last miles, as we call them. But I don't think, in the trying to just think ahead to the scheme of what's going to be upgraded, I don't foresee many cameras having to be moved. And if they are, again, if they're interior and they're ceiling mounted, we can do that in-house. And again, if it's something exterior, then, we can use the local guy to say, hey, we just need this mount moved. And if it's not high enough off the ground, then I can tackle those too. So.
Thank you.
Have you spoken to any of the other schools?
Yes.
So, and what have they?
They're again, because they are expensive and a lot of schools are bigger. My colleague at Belchertown really wanted to go with Verkada, but the cost to do 7 buildings and the superintendent's office was extremely pricey. So they opted to go with a more of a homegrown solution, which he groaned about, because he wants simplicity, as again, being the one guy who runs IT here, I don't want something that's constantly breaking down saying, hey, camera number 3 is out or camera 8 is out. We just want things to work, ideally in life, that's all we want, right?
Right. Now, I mean, have you spoken to any who have this, such as Mahar? Mahar is about the same building wise.
Monarch's basically just a reseller for Verkada. So Monarch, I mean, you can basically just forget them. There's kind of like the
I'm
middle.
sorry, Steve, the school district. She's talking about the
School district.
Yeah.
Our regional school district has the system as a customer.
Oh, Monarch does?
Mahar.
But that's what it says.
Oh, Mahar. Oh, no, I haven't reached out to them exactly, but again, I have used this product in higher ed. I have spoken to some of the other districts via email on, basically it's a listserv, so people just ask questions and people give comments. So I haven't had direct conversations with an actual district using it. I mean, I can certainly reach out and get some more feedback, but from the limited use I have in higher ed and from the feedback I've gotten on the listserv, everyone is like, hey, if you can get them and if you can afford them, then that's the way to go.
I'll say I'm comfortable committing now. I mean, I think the installation costs will essentially be, we'll pay the same rate. The hours might change. So that to me is essentially a wash between products. And if, Steve, it sounds like you've done your homework, I can see the compelling argument to have the good products for our 2 schools, right? And
yeah, I mean, again, for me, Paul, it's I want to do, and again, it was the same in higher ed, if we're putting something forward to the customer, which in this case is our students, and not so much security. I mean, that's more of just for everyone, but I like to put out the best product I can, whether it's a projector, whether it's a security camera, and if it's affordable, which, I think it is. And again, I think we're fortunate that we're small enough that we can afford the better products, not necessarily have to scale back because we have too many buildings, we're too big of a district. So, I think that actually worked in our favor for this. And again, the discounting that they were able to provide us was really super deep as well. So, all things considered, I think, it's kind of a win for us. And again, looking at installation is, obviously that's, like you said, we're going to pay it no matter what product we stick on the end of that wire, right? So
right.
Might as well put in something good that's gonna work out for us.
I really appreciate how you boil down that we don't have a lot of people to oversee and take sort of upkeep the system. It makes a lot of sense to have something that does not break down as much and that is supported with a warranty that is extremely rapid and high quality. So I do appreciate that.
I do too. I mean, it's part of, there's so much to do on a daily basis for everyone. I mean, anyone that does any sort of multitasking in their jobs, if you get one more task that, suddenly, hey, I can get a camera replaced. It's going to take me 10 minutes to send an email with an issue. Next day I'll have a camera, whether I can swap it out myself, great. If not, then, we pay the guy an hour to come out, set up a ladder and swap it out. It's a done deal. Now, if I call another vendor and say, hey, we're going to spend 4 hours troubleshooting this because, you know, we don't know who installed it. We don't know what the wire's like. You know, a lot of unknowns there. So again, at the end of the day, time is money. Projects are projects. You know, there's no shortage of them here in Hadley, which is, you know, kind of a good thing. and we're gonna add more to this from an IT side of things. So, you know, you'll see me again asking for more things to do. But for right now, you know, let's get these cameras figured out, what we want to do, and go forward.
Great. Ethan, any final thoughts on this?
No, I think all of the questions that I had have been answered, and I think I'm kind of with Paul. I'm comfortable moving forward with this today, and you know, given the fact that the work that's going to be done has to go out to bid, and we're going to take the lowest bidder, like that money's going to be locked in at that rate, and so and I trust Steve in this. If this is the product that he feels most comfortable and that's going to keep our kids safe, let's do it.
Okay, Christine.
I know that Christine was having to address a couple of things in her house, so she
Okay.
may step away to do that for just a moment.
Okay.
Hi, I'm back. I apologize. Having a sundowners moment.
Okay.
Not me. No, I guess I know, I agree with the value. I guess I'm just a little leery of the, you know, the rush and the discount and, you know, not being able to get a better grip on costs prior to voting. I guess that's just, you know, looking at worst case scenario and then, yeah. So, but
I had that same concern when I first started asking questions about this. And I know that it is also a very competitive marketplace. So when we put it out to bid, we will probably get the best possible bid amongst certified vendors. So I take solace in our rigorous process. And that gives me enough comfort to, you know, move on a product that we want to move on that's at a great discount, and maybe come in at around the holiday time, which would be ideal, is if our students aren't in the building for 12 or so days and we're able to get this installed. You know, we've got a good month or so to get our bidding process together. And so it seems, I like the idea of moving forward expeditiously if this is the system we want to select, because the bidding process is going to help us get our best electrical bid, is what I'm thinking.
and but there's no guarantee that we're going to have people available to do it.
Yes, there are no guarantees in life.
Well, I mean, it will get done. You know, it's just a matter of timelines. Obviously, you know, the group that is the Verkada certified, they are pretty much on board with a December kind of timeframe. You know, without anything being concrete and written in stone yet. You know, they said they're typically right now 2 to 3 weeks out from starting. And again, they don't really classify our job as a big job. You know, for us it is, because, you know, it's good size. But, you know, like I said, if they're doing 10 buildings in a district or 20 buildings, like Worcester Schools, for example, my friend just worked there. They have 57 buildings. So, you know, by way of comparison, you know, we have 3. So it's pretty easy. So scalability, you know, they look at us and say, you know, this is a pretty simple job, aside from the actual getting that last mile wire out there. So, but they did state that they're, you know, from signing 2 to 3 weeks out from that point.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Any final comments on deliberation before we take a vote on this? Christine, Ethan, Paul?
Just thinking, Christine, what would help address your concerns, do you think? getting another quote or?
I guess that's, for me, that, only seeing one quote makes it harder for me to
Sure.
grasp whether or not this is a good deal, whether or not, this is actually my brother-in-law's area of expertise. And he does this for a living. So, I don't know. I guess I would have to see more about whether or not this is a good deal, but that's just me. You're telling me that this is a good deal for a camera, but I don't know what it's in comparison to. So that's just, I guess that's just me being sort of more of a visual kind. I need to see, things to compare it to. That's all.
I think Chris alluded to the fact that, he did do that camera for standard quality back X amount of years ago, and it was essentially $2,500 for that camera, and that's for one. We're paying, I don't have the quote open up in front of me, but cameras range from $1,200 to $2,400, I believe. And I think the environmental sensors are probably the priciest options at close to, I believe, $3,000 for those. So I don't think you're finding a commercial grade camera with warranty for that price anywhere in the market. You will get cheaper cameras, but you're going to get a year warranty, a 3-year, if you're lucky, warranty. So again, paying what you classify as more per camera, it also comes with more. It's like anything nowadays, you get what you pay for. And if we were able to get 10 years without paying too much more than what we pay for a 5-year camera, and again, being from a support standpoint, simple call, simple replacement, simple ease of use. That's how I'm approaching it. And again, you guys approach it differently. And again, I tried to factor in the needs of the schools, the needs of the principals.
Oh, no, I'm not questioning that.
Yeah, no, I get that.
My own thought process is I usually like to see something to compare it to.
Yeah,
So, I have at least something there to give me a basis. That's all.
But again, it's similar to, having used this product in the past, you kind of go with what you like anyways, from a standpoint. So, if you're a GM person, you tend to buy GM cars. If you're a Ford person, you buy Ford cars. If it's a particular dealer you like, you're going to go back to that dealer, right? So it's kind of the same way as far as, people that in this industry, they stay with what they know. And that's sometimes, that's good sometimes, and sometimes it's not. But, I'm 100% confident in this decision that, it's going to serve us well for the full 10 years.
I'm comfortable with moving forward tonight based on your assessment of the technology and what you described to be a reputable vendor and a set of products that will be supported for 10 years. So I would be in favor of moving forward tonight. Do we want to entertain a vote?
Sure. I'm compelled by the 10-year agreement. I think that I can see the value of that, Steve, that relationship, the warranty for the equipment if it breaks down.
Can I jump in? Annie, I guess we haven't heard from you much on this. Do you have anything you want to share before we take this to a vote? Obviously, we talked a little bit about this, but.
Yeah, well, just one of the things, Christine, I think you raised some really good questions. The company, the list that they're on, the contract list, PEPM. So in order for any bidder for contract to get on that list, they have to first submit a sealed bid. They have to meet really stringent requirements there. And the cooperative does that legwork. That is not to say I'm in no way suggesting that your suggestion is an excellent one, but I want to respond to, in a way, PEPM, the cooperative purchasing agent, kind of does that evaluation, and then you don't get to be a part of the cooperative. And this is for governmental entities and primarily for public school districts and educational organizations that have to comply with bidding laws. Then we can go on, and a great deal of that vetting has been done. It's kind of like the state bid list. So the vendor had to meet those. I just wanted to, sometimes it's not information, and it's good that you asked this, even for the general public to understand that this vendor is on has been vetted by a purchasing cooperative, had to go through that process, meet all their requirements, submit a sealed bid, and then we're allowed to choose from there, just like state bid list. So it's like the governmental entity did that vetting on our behalf. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our
Do we need a motion to?
motion to vote?
Yes, we have a motion and a
So I
second.
think Paul made a motion, so I think there's a
Oh.
motion, and I interrupted the motion. I don't know how that works. Sorry, Humira.
I did by asking a question.
That was a good question. Good question, Ethan. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul, for the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you so much, and really appreciate you helping us understand, Stephen, Chris, Annie, all that this is, this entails. I think it was a necessary conversation, and I really appreciate you engaging with us on it.
Yeah, thank you.
I thank you for listening. So it's a big decision and one, not to take lightly, but again, it's bringing us up to par with our sister, our equal institutions, puts us ahead of others. Not that it's a contest, but it's always nice to have nice products. So,
Yeah.
and again, the support, the ease of use, things like that. That's been strong selling points for this.
Steve, I have a quick question. Is there a camera in the courtyard?
No. At Hopkins?
Yeah.
No. Do you think there should be one?
What's going on in the courtyard?
Well, that's usually where the seniors and juniors hang out. So I'm just, that was just.
No, again, I mean, we've done the walkthrough and, we sat with the principals to get, eyes on, for them, it was more stairwells, exterior buildings, things of that nature. But no one's actually, that's a darn good question, and maybe something that we should look at. And again, for scalability on these things, if we decide 6 months, a year down the road, like, hey, we really have a blind spot here, we really need a camera here. You just basically buy a camera with a 10-year license, or they prorate it, and you plug it in, and it's boom, shows up in your system, says, all right, I'm ready to go. But yeah, I'm gonna write that down as a potential spot to look at. That's a great catch.
Christine, it sounds like you might know where all the spots are.
I know, geez.
Yeah, my boys, as they've gotten further away from high school, they've been telling a lot more tales of things I didn't know. It's not pretty.
Maybe I should have a call with them.
Yeah,
There you go. See,
yeah.
it'd be a good resource.
Yes, no, that was a great acknowledgement of a potential need there. So on the next walkthrough, we will look at that.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
apologize. I have to leave. I'm already a bit late, but sorry.
Thank you, Paul.
See y'all.
Appreciate
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Paul.
Paul.
And thank you, Stephen, for this presentation.
Oh yeah, it probably went on way longer than we expected it, but no, it's good information. Again, it's an important decision, and I'm glad you guys were able to get the answers you needed and the clarity that you needed on moving this forward. So
Terrific. We look forward to
Thank
hearing
you.
about expeditious installation. Thanks so much.
we will follow up.
All right, terrific. Okay, moving on to item 4C. We are discussing the first reading of the proposed SRO, School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding. So over to the Policy Subcommittee for discussion.
All right, I am Just pull up my. All right, I just pulled up the proposed one. So essentially, the new agreement, or proposal, I should say, is much more in depth and has a lot more detail about what the SRO, what their position is, what their position is not. It clearly states that this is not to be used as any type of, discipline, that this is about community building, about relationship building. Just trying to get over to the other side. If you take a look at the old agreement, this is much more in depth. And I think it's very well laid out, and I think that it covers everything we need. I don't know, does anybody have any concerns about it?
And I was just going to add that this is, basically this new memorandum, and again, stop me if I'm wrong, is a lot of the legwork was through the police officers kind of taking what they've gotten from the state police and all of that and kind of inputting that into this, correct?
It was in direct response to the police reform bill. The police reform bill is about a lot more than school resource officers, but as part of the police reform bill, things like what Christine pointed out, and that's great context, Ethan, but like what Christine pointed out, being very explicit in MOUs between police and schools, that school resource officer is not a disciplinarian, is not a de facto assistant principal in a school.
Right.
It lays out very explicitly the kinds of training that we expect SROs to have, training in cultural proficiency, training in nonviolent response, training in de-escalation and positive behavioral interventions and supports. So you are correct, this is all stems from the police reform bill, and then the Mass Association of School Superintendents, their legal counsel, the legal counsel for the school committee also looked at the proposed and recommended adopting the proposed MOU because it does align with the expectations in that police reform bill.
Right. And I'm assuming, so, and again, we talked about this earlier, that this is in fact for, been sort of written up and put out to all school systems to have the same language and to know that this is through the state. This is not just with just Hadley.
Right.
That this covers
Correct.
all
So
possible situations, so that, and again, the training, I can tell you just from, everything that we spoke to Officer Romano about, and what I've learned on my own from someone who's been through it, is the training for the SROs is really intense and they learn a lot, and it's I think it's a program that's going to work out very well, and they're continuously learning. They're going to be asked to do essentially the same as what teachers do as PDPs. They're going to continuously be training so that this is not something that people are going to look at and just think it's a security guard.
Terrific. Well, reviewing this document, I can tell you that it is a night and day difference from what we were originally looking at 6 months or so ago. I commend the state and the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents for going in this direction. It really is very comprehensive. I appreciate the level of detail in describing what a school resource officer does and how they're trained, and also what they don't do, and how there is a clear demarcation between the schools and the police, even though there is this human resource, a police human resource professional that is over on the school side. So I really did appreciate the thoroughness. So we are looking at this for first reading, which means that we will come back and vote on it in December. And thank you for bringing it to us. Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item of the agenda, we are reviewing the Safe School and DEI Support Specialist role. Annie.
Yes, I'm requesting this evening that the school committee consider approving a position of Safe Schools and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Support Specialist. This position would be funded in fiscal year 23 through ESSER 3 funding, and also we have enough ESSER 3 funding without taking anything away from the ESSER 3 funding that we intended to use for HVAC. We have enough ESSER 3 funding that we could fund the position through FY24. However, I anticipate that we may continue to get continuation grants in school safety. So there may be other grant funding sources that can sustain the position in FY24. The salary would be prorated. This would be a school year salary. What you're looking at is, although it's not a Unit A position, because there is not a specific certification that we're looking for with this position, the salary range that you're looking at is roughly from one place of the Unit A salary schedule to, depending on education and experience, education beyond a bachelor's degree and experience. The purpose, you can read the job summary. You can also see qualifications and the goals of the job. But really, this is a way to have someone who can assist us in moving forward our goals around school safety, a culture of belonging, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So some specific examples of that could be responding to events where students need help mediating conflict. This individual would be at the lead of getting restorative justice implemented in concert with the building principals. And we are looking for someone who would respond to times when students are frustrated, may have conflict, or may be experiencing dysregulation or other things, that we can respond in a way that is considered trauma informed. So we're meeting the whole person, helping them to improve their behavior and supporting people. And you'll also see, as part of this role is designed to work with families and not just students, and try to understand if families are having experiences in our system that are not the kind of experiences that we want them to have, that this individual is somebody outside of kind of the building administration and the superintendent that families can go to and talk to about concerns that they might have, if there are factors that they think may be contributing to a struggle that their child may be having in school. I welcome any questions. Again, requesting that this position, if it were approved, we would post for this position. We would hire a qualified applicant, and we would pay for the position through ESSER 3 funding in fiscal year 23.
Very good, Annie, for presenting this. And I think you and I had spoken about a year ago about similar positions that were DEI coach in nature and might span both buildings. Can you just mention, will this be a position that spans both buildings?
Yes, yes,
And-
it will. Yeah, it will.
Okay.
I will say that some of, what we're seeing is that Hopkins may see a little bit more support, but that's may need additional support, but that we're seeing that across middle schools and high schools right now, post-pandemic. So yes, it is it's district-wide, it is for both buildings, but it is likely that that Hopkins and the students in Hopkins would require more support at this time.
Very good. Thank you. Christine.
So does this have any overlap with what Michelle's doing?
Excellent question. It's complementary, but not exactly overlap. So Michelle's position example, what Michelle is doing with social emotional learning and multi-tiered systems of supports. So she's making sure that all of our systems stay up and running. So all of the universal screening, facilitating data meetings. Michelle works a great deal directly with staff. She does go into classrooms and she models the implementation of the social and emotional learning curriculum. She's also the lead on 2 of our grants, the mental health grant and our Safe and Supportive Schools grant. She does a lot of work directly with adults. This isn't to say that this person would not also support teachers in the building. This is also someone who works a lot more directly with students and families. So trying to bring in kind of student and family voice of, yes, there may be some things that we need to address, that can we look at, you know, the experiences that my family or my child is having, what might be contributing to that. So think a little bit more directed at students. Michelle does model, coach, go in and show lessons, but she does more working with teachers directly and setting up day-to-days, the schedules for MTSS, interpreting the data with the teachers, making determinations about groupings for students, progress monitoring, and that's academic screenings and also our behavioral health screenings. So that's kind of a distinction, but definitely complementary, right? It's complementary. The slight distinction would be this is a bit more student facing.
Great. Thank you. Wonderful question. Ethan, any comments or questions?
No questions. That I think this is a great position, a great opportunity for our school system to become more inclusive and also to hopefully gain a little bit more better understanding of our community, our families, our students. So I'm really excited about this.
As am I. Agreed. This needs a vote. So do I hear a motion to approve?
Is anyone else having?
You froze for a minute, but you're back.
You're back.
But maybe
So
not.
you're still frozen now. So if your internet is struggling, Christine, you might want to turn your camera off. That could help. Keep your voice on and turn your camera off. And that could help if your internet's going in and out.
And unmute.
Unmute.
There we go. All of
Okay.
a sudden, everybody just disappeared.
All right. So do I hear a motion to approve this position?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Motion
Thank
passes.
you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, we are moving on to the next item of our agenda, slowly and steadily, the fiscal year 24 budget timeline. Annie.
Chris and I will provide a local contribution request to the town on December 16th. The local contribution request is a portion of the budget, a significant portion, about 80%. It's not all of the budget. The town will not receive a line like a more in-depth budget prior to the school committee, but we will be sending that number over to them. Chris and I have not had a chance to finalize some of our numbers. Know that although the town, as always, is very generous and they have said, please ask for the budget that you need, we are also very mindful that the town has a lot of departments and a lot of responsibilities. So as we've demonstrated historically, we will make sure that that request is responsive to our needs, but also a responsible request. And then we will bring that to you in December. But I just wanted to let you know that that local contribution request is due to the town by December 16th, and we'll have it to them by that time.
Thank you, Annie and Chris. We look forward to seeing your recommendation in December. Moving on to the next item, we have the NEASC accreditation update. Annie.
Yes, the Hopkins Academy is no longer on warning status. I've linked in the letter. They've done excellent work. So the staff needs to be commended, deserves to be commended for this, as does the principal. But NEASC is really a group effort and requires a lot of hard work from the faculty. And so you can see the commission cites all the things that it's positive, that it's pleased to hear about at Hopkins Academy. And there is a long list there. And that is, again, joint effort of the teachers at Hopkins, the staff at Hopkins, and the administration. So I just wanted the school committee to know that that is our status update, and we will be going back for accreditation. Oh, goodness gracious.
Your time, right?
Yeah, soon, in 2028.
10 years time, 10 years time.
Yes.
Congratulations to you and to the faculty and leadership at Hopkins. This was no easy feat. It's been a long time in the making, and it's so nice to get an all clear. So thank you.
Thanks, they did great work.
Yeah, and I don't
Miss
miss
Pip was
Leanne.
a part of this.
Oh, yeah.
Miss Pip was a part of this. She knows. So thank you, Miss Pip. Thank you.
I don't miss it. I miss the kids.
All right. Well, moving on to the next item of our agenda, we are on to the business manager's report. Chris.
Okay, so I have two reports for you tonight. The first is the expense report. Just a couple of items I need to point out to you because I would imagine there might be some concern if you're looking at a few of the lines, especially on page 6 of the report. Excuse me. We have special ed tuitions that are over budget. One line by 30,000, another one by 171,000. And I would imagine people are saying, yikes. But really, it's just that DESE has been very slow in approving the grants. The special ed 240 grant that we get is 170,000 alone. And we also budgeted to use 175,000 in circuit breaker money, which none of these expenses have been transferred yet. So we'll actually wipe out that deficit as soon as the 240 grant is approved. And it's not a question of if, it will be just when they'll actually get to approve it. So, you know, as soon as we do that, I will transfer the expenses over, and we'll be looking much better then.
That's good news. And also I have a question for that kind of cash flow situation. Is it the town that is carrying the weight of that until that comes in?
That's a very good question, actually. The answer to that is, it's, I guess, kind of yes and no. Yes, they kind of are, but because we have, you know, if you look at the revolving accounts report, for example, we've got all of that money that's sitting there, you know, essentially in the town coffers as backup, you know, so that the town doesn't actually go into a negative balance with their accounts, waiting for this grant money to come in. So, no, we're still fine as far as that goes, but that's a good question.
Very good. Thank you. And on to the next document.
That would be the revolving accounts report. So again, a couple of items I wanted to point out. The first is the lunch account that we didn't get any of this year's deposits until November, $32,000. So rather than showing that big drop from 154 down to 110, we're actually 154 down to about 142.5. So it's not nearly as big a drop as what it looks like on that report. And the other item just to point out is the student activity account. You see there was a big increase in the month of October. We have that Washington, D.C. trip. And the check was written for that check a few days after the end of the month. So it's not reflected in that balance, but it was more or less just the money went in and the money went out a couple of days after the end of the month. So you'll see that balance come down, obviously, when I do the November 30th balances for you. And just, you know, the school choice balance, this is why we felt comfortable using it for the camera system in the schools, because we have a pretty healthy balance in that account. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on the revolving accounts.
No questions on my
No
end.
questions.
Okay, and the grant report that I typically have for you by now, again, just with the slowness of the grant approvals, we're going to have a bunch of expense transfers over to them once they get approved, but essentially what I'd be showing you now is just a couple of grants on a page that we still haven't had any expenses for. So I would assume by the time we have our next meeting, these will be approved and I'll be able to report on them.
Nothing to worry about, right?
Absolutely nothing. Nope.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to school committee reports and discussion items, finance. I did a sanity check with Annie earlier this week and said there hasn't been a finance committee meeting since I began on this task, right? And she was like, no, I assure you, if there has, they've been meeting without me. So still no finance meeting or tri-board meeting. Tara was going to go to a CES meeting, and when she's back next month, we'll find out how it went. I'll also ask her to forward on any executive director reports that she receives. They're chock full of updates, and we can get our hands on those. Policy, Ethan.
Yes, Christine and I have begun exploring the exciting world of school committee policies. We looked at what looks like 13 earlier today, maybe 14 if we count staff transportation. And we will continue to do that throughout the year as we kind of examine all the policies within the committee.
And as you have recommended changes, you'll modify and bring those to us for first and second.
Absolutely. Yep.
Terrific. Thank you for staying on top of that. I was a part of the team many years ago that undertook a review of policies that hadn't been touched in, I want to say, like 10 years time. It was a big lift. And so it's really nice, Annie, that you keep us just going through them and just making sure that we never get into that situation again.
No problem. Appreciate you guys doing it.
Yeah.
On to fields. We had Paul. We don't know.
I can tell you quite quickly that, as Chris knows, he's reached out to Carlos in order to get information about putting together a bid for the fields. We did hear from the Community Preservation Committee today from Mary Thayer. Chris has the information on how to submit bills. And I don't know if Carlos got back to you. Your cat got back to you.
This cat just loves to be on camera, I guess. He invades the Ware School Committee meetings too in the same way. Carlos did get back to me this afternoon. And it looks basically like we are probably in total a couple of months out of being able to go out to bid. He said it looks like January. They still have some Conservation Commission items that they just have to wait for approval on. And he expected to go out to bid in January and have the bidding opened in February and the name of the winning vendor after that. So, he did say that would put us in pretty good timing for starting the project as soon as school gets out like we did last time. So we're looking good with that. He's aware at least that the money has been approved and, the timeline we're looking to have.
Great.
Terrific. And for those who may not have been at town meeting and have not heard, we had our warrant article for the fields approved by the town. We're very appreciative and just so thrilled to be able to move forward with the final phase of the project. And thank you for everyone who worked to get out the vote and advocate for this important project to be completed. Really appreciate your support. And finally, we have item E, capital. Christine.
Nothing to report. Nothing will be happening until spring. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, announcements. I don't see Joyce on the line, but do any of my school committee colleagues have any announcements to make?
No.
No, not at this time.
Okay, very good. Annie, you have
The calendar, just always a reminder, right? On the calendar, just always a reminder. On the 20th, we have the 1 hour delay, 1 hour early dismissal, the 20th of December. The 23rd is a half day prior to the December break, which is that last week of December.
Terrific. Annie, just a quick word on how the late dismissals or the later start is going and the shared busing situation between Hopkins Academy and Hadley Elementary.
So the feedback we've heard from faculty and staff is that they appreciate the collaboration time. So they have found it quite useful. And I'm sure the principals will have an update at the end of the year of what kinds of work that teachers were doing during that time and staff was doing during that time. I have not heard from any students angry that they are being dismissed early or getting to come into school late. So no negative feedback from them. And in terms of transportation, the single tier, which means everybody being picked up at once, we have had some glitches. For example, the first time we did it, a driver, completely understandable, when things are new, driver did a route in reverse and we had to say, okay, we got to do it the other way. So we have had some glitches. It is hard at this point to tell if those are entirely single tier or they're meaning having all the children on the bus together, or are these glitches happening for other unrelated reasons, like not doing the route sheet as it's printed, or we've also had some issues with absenteeism, and that's because sickness is still a big thing, right? Colds and flus and COVID. So we'll keep our eye on it. And I will say that we have not had, one of the concerns that parents understandably raised was, will there be issues with behavior if we're mixing older and younger children? So that concern, we haven't seen anything like that. So that hasn't been an issue. It's just getting the routes and the times. And this was kind of a test to see if and probably when the state passes the legislation around a later start time for high school, what options we might have at the district in transportation that could potentially A, reduce cost, and B, allow us to share staff better. So we'll keep paying attention to how it's going.
Very promising. Thank you for keeping us abreast of that.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to action items. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 24th?
I make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve the executive session minutes of October 24th?
So
So
moved.
move. Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, motion passes. Next, we have the approval of the warrants for October 2022. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. We've already voted on and approved the tech upgrades. And part of that was, did we authorize the use of school choice funding? I don't recall.
I don't recall if you did either because we recorded it, but I didn't wrote down a first and a second here.
I think we might have voted on the installation of the tech upgrades themselves, perhaps not the use of school choice funding part of it. To be safe, it
Yep,
might make
That'd be
sense
great. Thank you.
to, do I hear a motion to utilize school choice funding to cover the tech upgrades that we heard about this evening?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We've already approved the Nature's Classroom field trip. And we've already approved the new Safe Schools and DEI support specialist job description, as well as the use of ESSER funding fiscal year 23. The next meeting dates, so the fourth Monday falls around the time of the holidays. And there's only 3 of us on the line, so there's 2 others to factor in. That Monday is actually fine for me. It's the Monday after Christmas. I think it's going to be a pretty short meeting. The other thing is we could start earlier. If it's around the holidays and people have time off, we could potentially start at 1 or, 9 in the morning.
I'm open to it.
I know, Annie, you have a conflict the Monday prior, which is usually what
I
we
do.
start looking at.
Yeah, I do have a conflict the Monday prior, but if people were looking, if they wanted to stay out of that last week, I can't, I can do the evening of Wednesday, the 21st. I can do the evening of the 22nd. I don't imagine anybody wants to meet on a Friday, so I could do Wednesday or Thursday. Well, anytime I work for you, but I assume most of you all are at work. So that's what I said, anytime on the 22nd or 21st or 22nd.
So Annie, can you
Do
run
a
poll?
calendar? Yeah,
poll-
I sure will.
Poll all of us and see what works best between the 21st, 22nd, or the 26th, especially looking at alternate times on the 26th. That might allow us to be up an evening.
Sure thing. Happy to. Okay.
Terrific. Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I don't
Aye.
think-
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.